The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Welcome to Rudy's Revelation. It's Sunday, February 14th, 2021. I'm Rudy, your host. Today I'll be talking back to the Sunday Talking Heads on CBS Face the Nation, where Congressman and impeachment manager Joe Neguse balks at the question of why Democrats backed off the threat of calling witnesses at the trial. And CBS News senior national correspondent Mark Strassman regurgitates propaganda about the January 6th riot at the Capitol. We'll also be checking in for Sunday morning propaganda at our favorite feel-good feature news program, CBS Sunday Morning, where CBS News chief, Washington correspondent Major Garrett reviews this week's historic trial in which Senate Republicans, including GOP leader Mitch McConnell, chose to acquit Mr. Trump. And I'll be tearing into the Sunday New York Times, showing how the newspaper continually mischaracterizes the facts to mislead the public. I'll also be going over the weekend headlines all in the next 30 minutes. But first, I'll be taking you back to school, giving you some historical context to frame this week's news narratives. The word of the day is ideologue.
An often blindly partisan advocate or adherent of a particular ideology.
Also, an impractical idealist. The reason we get into ideologue, the word ideologue has been in use since the early 1800s and has a negative connotation. An ideologue is someone who expounds a certain idea or ideology fervently and vociferously. An ideologue will not listen to compromise. It is considered unbending and unreasonable. The ideology that an ideologue adheres to is usually dogmatic. It is a bit of an insult to refer to someone as an ideologue. The word ideologue has its roots in French word idéologue, a back formation from the word ideology, coming into use in 1815 as a description of French revolutionaries. From Wikipedia, an ideology is a set of beliefs or philosophies that are attributed to a person or persons or groups of persons, especially as held for reasons that are not purely epistemic, in which practical elements are as prominent as theoretical ones, formally applied primarily to economic, political, and religious theories and policies in a tradition going back to Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. More recent use treats the term as mainly condemnatory. The term was coined by Antoine Destutt-de-Tracy, a French Enlightenment aristocrat and philosopher, who conceived it in 1796 as a science of ideas to develop a rational system of ideas to oppose the irrational impulses of the mob. In political science, the term is used in a descriptive sense to refer to a political belief system. An ideologue is a collection of normative beliefs and values that an individual or group holds for other than purely epistemic reasons. The term and the system of the ideas associated with it was coined by Antoine Destutt-de-Tracy in 1796, and as a contemporary philosophy is now narrower in scope than the original concept, or the ideas expressed in concepts such as a worldview, imaginary, and ontology. From the Federalist, why both the left and right are political hypocrites and what to do about it. The difference between a partisan and an ideologue. There can be no meaningful dialogue premised upon shared values if both sides only apply those values when it lets them score points. The class of moderately intelligent, political aware people are those most affected by this trend. They have become political ideologues. An ideologue is at least consistent in his belief in specific policies. A partisan openly supports his gang above all else, but a partisan ideologue is worse than both. He is a Machiavellian creature, a supporter of ends justify the means, approaches to pushing an agenda. The gang must be defended that the agenda might be defended, even when the gang violates core tenets of the agenda. Partisan ideologues are dishonest by nature. Worse still, they cannot even tell when they are being dishonest. That is from the Federalist. And our reading recommendation of the week,
less than 3% of you people read books,
is The Ideologue, documenting the transformation of the United States under the Obama policies, the ideological premises of that transformation. The book makes clear that policy considerations under Obama were defined in terms of his ideological disposition instead of what is necessarily in the best interest of the country. His left-wing disposition left little room for cost-benefit analysis and for policies emerging from a true national dialogue. Obamacare was made into law without a single Republican vote. Much of the proposed legislation passed by the House of Representatives were shelved by the Democrat Senate. Race relations became worse under his administration as he preferred to interfere in every case involving African Americans while ignoring compelling facts. His decision on the Keystone Pipeline is illustrative of appeasement policy for the left instead of one that produces jobs and energy independence for the United States. The book synthesizes the ideological foundation of numerous policies that were driven by President Obama's extreme liberalism in order to keep the base of the Democratic Party and major liberal donors in tow. Many of his policy choices were achieved by extra-constitutional methods such as executive orders and congressional paralysis instituted by Harry Reid. Meanwhile, the ranks of the poor, the underemployed, the too discouraged to seek employment, and those receiving food stamps rose to historic levels. Despite the most optimistic promises President Obama made, the U.S. recovery continued anemic. The book will provoke much discussion and perhaps strong disagreements and perhaps applause. It should therefore contribute to the vibrancy of our democracy and to the solidity of our Constitution. And with that, we're going to go over to the headlines. Senate acquits Trump of inciting deadly Capitol attack. 7 Republicans broke with their party to convict the former president, well short of the 2/3 required. Everybody knows it was going to happen. That's why this was seen as a futile attempt to discredit Trump and to ruin his chances for future political office. From the Boston Herald, full text of Trump's statement on the impeached acquittal. So we're going to read that right now. This is Donald Trump responding to his acquittal on the impeachment. I want to first thank my team of dedicated lawyers and others for their tireless work upholding justice and defending truth. My deepest thanks as well to all the United States senators and members of Congress who stood proudly for the Constitution we all revere and for the sacred legal principles at the heart of our country. Our cherished constitutional republic was founded on the impartial rule of law, the indispensable safeguard for our liberties, our rights, and our freedoms. Check it. It is sad commentary of our times that one political party in America is given a free pass to denigrate the rule of law, defame law enforcement, cheer mobs, accuse rioters, and transform justice into a tool of political revenge, and persecute, blacklist, cancel, and suppress all people and viewpoints with whom or which they disagree. I always have and always will be a champion for the unwavering rule of law, the heroes of law enforcement, and the right of Americans to peacefully and honorably debate the issues of the day without malice and without hate. Check it. This has been yet another phase of the greatest witch hunt in history. In the history of our country, no president has ever gone through anything like it, and it continues because our opponents cannot forget the almost 75 million people, the highest number ever for a sitting president, who voted for us just a few months ago. I also want to convey my gratitude to the millions of decent, hardworking, law-abiding, God and country-loving citizens who have bravely supported these important principles in these very difficult and challenging times. Our historic and patriotic, beautiful movement to make America great again has only just begun. In the months ahead, I have much to share with you, and I look forward to continuing our incredible journey together to achieve American greatness for all of our people. There has never been anything like it. We have so much work ahead of us, and soon we will emerge with a vision for a bright and radiant and limitless American future. Well, that was Trump giving a statement after his acquittal for his second impeachment trial, which both of them had no chance of success. And with this one, he was already out of office, so seemed even more pointless. The next headline from the Wall Street Journal, Biden's gun policy plans start to take shape. This is one every Second Amendment lover should be thinking about, because Biden is coming for your guns. As he said, the administration has begun an outreach to gun control groups, but has yet to fill in the details on a politically tricky issue. And to get your gun. From Vanity Fair, I will destroy you. Biden aimed threatened a political reporter pursuing a story on his relationship. So this Deputy Press Secretary, T.J. Ducklow, lashed out at Politico journalist Tara Palmieri, because this guy, T.J. Ducklow, was having an affair with an Axios political reporter, Alexi McHammond, who covered the Joe Biden campaign. But the reason this becomes a news story is the fact that Joe Biden said that anybody that treats anybody else, unfairly or with malice will be fired. Well, they censured him and they punished him, and the backlash was severe, so he has put in his resignation. From the Washington Post, the fall of John Weaver, a Lincoln Project co-founder whose political career was shrouded in mystery. So this guy, John Weaver, one of the founders of the anti-Trump Lincoln Project, so he's a Republican fundraiser and lobbyist and political consultant. Apparently 21 men accused him of inappropriate, unwanted sexual texts. So apparently he is wanted for male companionship. The truth is that I'm not gay, he wrote. That I have a wife and 2 kids who I love. My inability to reconcile those 2 truths has led to this agonizing place. He, like any other people that put on a beard to their real lifestyle, he is interested in young men. And as a Republican, that's not surprising. If anybody knows anything about the Bohemian Grove, where Republican donors and bigwigs go to have homosexual sex, among other things, a satanic practice and whatnot. Next article is from Forbes. Is the stock market about to crash? Bubble is growing. There will be a bubble burst. Who knows when that's going to happen? With another stimulus package, it's very likely that there is going to be runaway inflation. So people should be wary, especially when some place like Forbes is the stock market about to crash. They're giving you a warning here by Jonathan Ponciano. Very, very concerning. Echoes of the 90s .com bubble are being heard loud and clear by nervous market experts. So the next article is from the Associated Press. In Nevada desert, a technology firm aims to be the government. I'll just read the lead here. In the Nevada desert, a cryptocurrency magnate hopes to turn dreams of a futuristic smart city into a reality. To do that, he's asking the state to let companies like his form local governments on land they own, which would grant them power over everything from schools to law enforcement. This has been coming for a long time. This is the corporatocracy. You saw it at in one instance when they replaced a sitting governor or a sitting mayor with a manager, a corporate manager, to take over the financial dealings of that city. I think that was Detroit. From the Wall Street Journal, forget self-driving cars. The Pentagon wants autonomous ships, choppers, and jets. Advanced technology developed for military uses could eventually be integrated in civilian products. Well, that's always the thing with DARPA and all this funding for R&D in the Pentagon is, it'll eventually filter down to civilian use. Well, of course, but my worry is autonomous ships, choppers, and jets that the Pentagon programs. This is an article by Andy Pastor. Defense moves are outpacing commercial automation efforts in the air, on the ground, and beneath the waves as officials seek to counter American adversaries' technological advances. China. According to current and former national security and industry officials, that progress, highlighted in cockpits managed primarily by computers, totally autonomous helicopters, and automated aerial refueling tankers, is likely to show up in future civilian aircraft, advanced aircraft control systems, and a range of drone applications. I mean, this is just the fact that the robots are coming. It's all over the news, and I touch on it every week. So the robots are coming, and more than likely to kill you. The next article is from the New York Times. First they guarded Roger Stone, then they joined the Capitol attack. So they have this picture here where they have Oath Keepers. Roger Stone used some Oath Keepers to provide security to him at one time in public, and then they were spotted at the Capitol riot or protest. Video shows the group guarding Mr. Stone, a longtime friend of former President Trump. This is another hit piece. I mean, now that Stone has been pardoned, they're coming after him again and trying to tie him to the riot, which he didn't even attend. And then they have headshots of all these Oath Keeper guys with their faces hidden. I mean, they're basically doxing these guys. Mr. Stone, a convicted felon who was pardoned by Mr. Trump. If he's pardoned by Mr. Trump, if it's a full pardon, he's no longer a convicted felon. So, as the New York Times constantly does, is they mischaracterize him as a convicted felon, a dirty trickster. So then they go out to dox these guys, Oath Keeper. I don't know if they mention these guys' names, but they're obviously soliciting, and they have the headshots again, 1 through 6. So they point them all out. I don't know if they don't name them here, but they're obviously egging their readers on to try to identify these people to dox them. So it doesn't really say here that they're charged with any crime. So again, you're doxing people who haven't been accused of any crime. It's unconscionable. I'm going to tear into the New York Times. First article up, the economic case for regulating social media. The core of business model of platforms like Facebook and Twitter poses a threat to society, requires retooling, as economists says. Social media platforms like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter generate revenue using detailed behavioral information to direct ads to individual users. People don't really know this, but your phone, in particular, not so much your laptop, but your phone has a face sensor, and it obviously has a camera pointed at your face that helps recover detailed behavioral information. It's not just what you put into your phone, but it reads your facial expressions. So the rising concern about social media abuses are already prompted legislators in Congress to break up some of the tech firms, along with other traditional antitrust measures, but the main hazard posed by these platforms is not aggressive pricing, abusive service, or other ills often associated with a monopoly. Instead, it's their contribution to the spread of misinformation, hate speech, and conspiracy theories. So that's where the New York Times goes, the economic view, the economic case for regulating social media. But in the third paragraph, they said it's to stop conspiracy theories and hate speech and misinformation. If people don't know, if people just want to understand something about conspiracy theories, people have probably heard this before. Conspiracy theory, the term was constructed by the CIA after the Kennedy Association because people had questions about what really happened. And the official story was untrue. And that's why people had, there are anomalies in the story, so people obviously questioned it. I mean, it was such a big story, and people did the same thing with 9/11 and Sandy Hook and everything else, where there are anomalies that people can't really explain, and so people have other narratives that they believe in, other theories about what happened, and they involve conspiracy. Just so people want to know there is conspiracy out there, and if you know anything about the intelligence workings of major states, let me tell you, they're involved in conspiracy. Intelligence services, secret police, FBI, the KGB. Well, it's not the KGB anymore. It's the NSB, I believe, in Russia. The ISI in Pakistan, the Chinese secret police, they're all involved in conspiracy. And what they do is they understand how you perceive reality, and they play on that. And so people have to get out of this one-dimensional thinking is that there's no conspiracy. The lack of conspiracy is probably less likely than the abundance of conspiracy. Next article, one legacy of impeachment, the most complete account so far of January 6th. Yet for all the heart-pounding narrative of that day presented on the Senate floor, what was so striking was how many questions remain unanswered. Indeed. The fact of the matter is, talk about conspiracy, they show a picture here that obviously shows people in black bloc. People don't know what black bloc is. It's a tactic used by Antifa where everybody dresses in black with their faces covered, and so they commit crime, and it's not really clear about who did it. It's hard to identify the people that are committing the crime. And most of the vandalism that happened in the Capitol, not all, but most of it happened by Antifa and other people associated with the instigation of violence or vandalism. Even Nancy Pelosi came out and she called it vandalism. It's vandalism and trespassing. Okay? There was some assault, apparently, on police. That doesn't make an insurrection. So, and they go off and they detail how many of the Capitol Police Force were injured. But the problem is that not even counting the officer killed that day, there was no officer killed on the 6th at the Capitol. The one officer that died of a stroke following it was claimed to have been beaten by a fire extinguisher. There's no proof of that. And that he contacted his wife from the office later that day and died of a stroke later that day, but wasn't beaten to death. The only person that died from violence on January 6th was Ashley Babbitt, and she was shot to death by Capitol Security, who was lying in wait, in cover, but she didn't see him. He didn't jump out and say, "Hey, stop or I'll shoot." He didn't warn her. There are other people that saw him there and didn't warn Ashley Babbitt either, so she tried to climb through the window, was helped through the window, and without warning, he shot her in the throat. Next article is coming soon. The vaccine passport. In the near future, travel may require digital documentation that shows passengers have to be vaccinated or tested for the coronavirus. Among governments and those in the travel industry, a new term has entered the vocabulary: vaccine passport, the mark of the beast. One of President Biden's executive orders aimed at curbing the pandemic asked government agencies to assess the feasibility of linking coronavirus vaccine certificates with other vaccination documentation and producing digital versions of them. COVID is not the coronavirus. COVID stands for Certificate of Vaccination Identification. Get it straight. Every year there'll be a new number and a new mark. And this is all going to jibe with the social credit score, where you're going to have a number that's going to allow you to do things. And if you dissent against the government, your social credit score will go to 0 and you won't be able to do anything or leave your house. And so they're doing it through medical tyranny.
You maniacs!
And we're going to end up here in the Sunday Review where the week of op-eds, opinion pieces and editorials, and they got some doozies here. Our economy of white resentment. Is this the end of the great hate? This is an article by Keith Olbermann. Talk about hate. Keith Olbermann was the biggest hater. If anybody saw his videos, he's a washed up sports guy from CNN. That was a political commentator on CNBC or MSNBC. And since then, during the Trump era, went on YouTube raging that Trump is a Russian agent and that people in the Trump administration are Russian scum and that somehow Trump supporters are allied with the Russian government. It's just the most absurd nonsense. And we're also going to touch on the article, the opinion piece by Stacey Abrams, How to Turn Your Red State Blue. So this is obviously a tactic they're using that they did in Georgia. They did obviously a legitimate registration campaign, but they did vote harvesting, ballot harvesting. But they also were encouraging liberals, leftists, to move to states that they want to turn blue. And they've been doing that in Texas for some time, and they did it successfully, or they thought successfully in Georgia. The way out of America's zero-sum, see, they changed the headline online. The way out of America's zero-sum thinking on race and wealth. The evidence shows we all lose when society is overwhelmed by white resentment and win when we organize across our differences. There are plenty of people, there's no white resentment for most parts. I mean, the people that might have racist views or bigoted views, well, they might have some resentment, but people have resentment against anything. They have resentment not because of their color necessarily, because of their lot in life. And so you're going to get resentment when you can't find a job, you can't take care of your family. You're going to have, whether it's white resentment. I want to see some real proof about racism. Okay? 50 years ago, you could find it. You could find Ku Klux Klan people marching. I want to see this. Please, with all your investigative power, news media, please uncover the insipid network of racists. So Stacey Abrams and Lauren Groh-Wargo, How to Turn Your Red State Blue. I'm not going to really go into the article, but this is a battle plan, if you will, on how Democrats can turn red states blue. And it's not by arguing ideas. Economic policy is what decides whether you're on the left or the right. It's not a social. There's no. The people who say, "Oh, I'm a social liberal" or "I'm a social conservative," that doesn't exist. If you're a conservative, you want the government to spend less money. If you're a liberal, you want liberal spending. That's why we're in a neoconservative time if you're a conservative, because if you sign off on a $3 trillion spending bill, there's nothing conservative about that. And of course, Keith Olbermann, is this the end of obsessively hating Donald Trump? Loathing him has been a passion, an addiction, and a compulsion. Let impeachment be the last hurrah. I agree, but, the liberals are all about not hating. Hate speech. Is this... they're such hypocrites because this is hate speech. This is hate. If you hate Donald Trump, it's hate speech. There's nothing, you don't have to like Donald Trump personally, but the policies, there's nothing to hate about the policies. He goes, I hated Donald Trump when hating Donald Trump wasn't cool. He goes in his credentials. The fact of the matter is, this article just admits that the left was full of hate for Trump and instilled it, and this is the most important part, instilled it in other people. So people were hating Trump for no reason. I talked to dozens, probably hundreds of people who couldn't explain why they hated Trump. And usually it was based on some misconception. He hates Jews. He hates women. He hates, he's the hater. He hates Mexico. He said all Mexicans are rapists. It's all this stuff that is just, you go back to Charlottesville and there are good people on both sides. That doesn't mean anything if you look into it. So I'm not sitting here defending Trump. It's just the reality, but no one wants to talk about realities. All right, we're going to go off to the talking heads. And we're going to start off with Face the Nation, where Congressman and impeachment manager Joe Neguse balks at the question of why Democrats backed off the threat of calling witnesses, which was very, very strange, because as Lindsey Graham has been saying all week, that if they want to call witnesses, we got witnesses. And so when the Republicans threatened to call their own witnesses, whether it was a stalling tactic or whether they really had information, the Democrats backed down, and they will refuse to say why.
Why did you back off the request for witnesses?
Why did you back off the request for witnesses?
The headlines this morning are similar to what they were almost exactly a day, a week, and a year ago. After being acquitted in the foreign interference impeachment case, now former President Donald Trump has been acquitted again. But this time, 7 Republican senators broke with their party.
Traitors.
We want to begin this morning with one of the impeachment managers, Colorado Democratic Congressman Joe Neguse. Extremist groups may be emboldened, and the violence on the 6th may just be the beginning. Are you saying Republicans are complicit in that? And
I want to salute and commend those 7 Republicans, people like Ben Sasse and Mitt Romney.
Why did you back off the request for witnesses?
Why did you back off the request for witnesses?
That's a fair question. I don't know that I would characterize it that way. Look, I know a lot of folks.
Well, you asked for them. The senators said yes, and then the House managers said they didn't require them. That's backing off.
Here's what I would say, and I'm happy to answer the question. So, Lead Manager Raskin touched on this yesterday. He proceeded with a request for one witness, not multiple witnesses. The request was for the video testimony and deposition testimony, which is how that's been done in prior impeachments. For example, during the Clinton impeachment in 1999 of Congressman Rare Butler. Given what we had learned about her statements just the night before, the full extent of her remarks, rather the conversation she had with Minority Leader McCarthy, that he had with President Trump, and clearly that conversation went directly to the president's state of mind, and in our view, and in the view of clearly 57 senators, supported our theory of the case. So we proceeded. Lead Manager Raskin rather proceeded with that request. It became very clear to us that.
Why did you back off the request for witnesses?
There do seem to have been some key items that came up at the last minute or were, frankly, overlooked until the last minute. You mentioned Congresswoman Herrera Butler's comments, but she said she first made those public back in January. If the stakes were as high as you're saying, why not hear from these witnesses?
Why did you back off the request for witnesses?
Watching this montage of mayhem, USA, USA, USA. It's spasms of menace and malice. This is America?
We were normal, good, law-abiding citizens, and you guys did this time.
Here you see Senator Mitt Romney abruptly reversing course away from rioters, now inside the Capitol. With gallows set up outside.
Not real.
The Secret Service whisked away Vice President Mike Pence and his family. An aide carried what appeared to be one of the 3 nuclear footballs. Rioters came within 100 feet of them. Representatives and staff cowered and cried. Video showed Chuck Schumer and other senators evacuate the Senate floor.
I mean, I had tears in my eyes. You heard every single breath, every single sigh. I had tears in my eyes. You heard every single breath, every single sigh. I mean, I had tears in my eyes.
If we pretend this didn't happen, or worse, if we let it go unanswered, who's to
Joe
say
Neguse.
it won't happen again?
Why did you back off the request for witnesses?
And that's it. That was Joe Neguse at the end there, of course. So we're going to leave you here with Sunday Morning Propaganda and CBS News Chief, Washington correspondent Major Garrett, who reviews this week's historic trial
No thinking person could seriously believe that the president's January 6th speech on the ellipse was in any way an incitement to violence or insurrection.
You know, I'm not afraid of Donald Trump running again in 4 years.
We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
Former President Donald Trump was acquitted after a historic second impeachment trial.
Is not guilty as charged in the article of impeachment.
We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
That assault by flag-waving armed Trump supporters and followed months of him spewing the so-called big lie. Armed Trump supporters.
He assembled the mob, he summoned the mob, and he incited the mob.
Mr. Burr, guilty.
7 Republicans voted to convict.
I'm not afraid of Donald Trump running again in 4 years.
Senator Mitt Romney running from marauders guided by Capitol Police Officer Eugene Goodman. And this, Senate Democratic leader Charles Schumer, led by his armed security, retreating down a basement hallway. The specter of a 2024 Trump bid for the presidency hung over the proceedings. Acquittal, as we know, was almost always certain. But.
You know, I'm not afraid of Donald Trump running again in 4 years.
Former president's legal team knew they'd likely prevail and mounted a defense based on complaints about partisanship, process, and First Amendment protections for political speech. Attorney Michael Vanderveen.
No thinking person could seriously believe that the president's January 6th speech on the ellipse was in any way an incitement to violence or insurrection.
Mr. Trump's lawyers accuse Democrats of using language similar to their clients.
To fight.
We have been fighting our fight.
Suddenly, the word fight is off limits? Spare us the hypocrisy and false indignation.
Anyone who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities.
We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
That's it for us. Rudy's Revelation. Every Sunday. Check us out, Twitter, Facebook. See you next week.